The hardest part of learning guitar is not finding good instruction. The hard part, the really hard part, is putting all the lessons and topics together in an order that makes sense. Finding a curriculum is actually the hardest part of learning guitar. To solve this, I created a 59-point blueprint of everything that every guitar player should learn in order. The 59 points are divided into 10 levels, so let's get started. A quick note before we get started, I'm not going to be teaching every single one of these topics in this video. I'm just going over the outline to give you guys structure. And if you just want the written list, that's linked in the description. Okay, let's start with level 1. In this level, you're totally new to the instrument, and your guitar playing evolution, you're kind of like a guitar single-celled amoeba right now. This is a very, very foundational level. I'm not assuming any prior knowledge, so step 1 would be to learn all the parts of the guitar. Next, you should learn the differences between acoustic and electric and just a little bit about how each one works. You want to learn how to hold the guitar and how to hold the pick. You want to learn how to strum. This includes up strums and down strums. You should learn how to fret a note. On the flip side of strumming from earlier, you should learn how to pick a single note. Speaking of which, what is a note and how many are there? In that same vein, you should learn specifically what the most basic intervals are, basically what are half steps versus whole steps. And finally, you should learn how to tune your guitar. All right, level 2, congrats on sticking with it. I want to say that if you master level 2, you are as good as you need to be if your goal is to get a girlfriend. Any more than that, and you're just going to impress other guitar players. I just want to be clear that for most of us, this is as good as we need to be. Anyway, in level 2, the first thing you got to do is understand what a chord is. Next, you have to learn your 7 essential open chords. These are E, E minor, A minor, G, C, and D. Next, you should learn to read chord charts. That'll be really helpful, especially as you're trying to learn songs. Next, you need to understand the basics of rhythm. And what I mean by this is you need to be able to understand what a whole note is, and then every note type all the way up until a 16th note. To kind of build on that for the next point in the roadmap, you have to be able to properly count strumming patterns. That means that you got to understand eighth notes and how they relate to strumming. Then you got to learn a little bit of guitar maintenance, and that is how to change your strings. I have some song recommendations, and these are all going to be either basic strumming songs or songs that you can play entirely on one string. Our songs are For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield, Wagon Wheel by Old Crow Medicine Show, famously covered by Darius Rucker, Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple, of course, Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes, and Iron Man by Black Sabbath. Hey you guys, before we get into level 3, I want to say that this video is sponsored by you. Specifically, it's sponsored by those of you who have signed up for my Patreon. If you're liking this roadmap so far, know that over on Patreon, I just finished a series where I taught every single point on this roadmap beginning to end. To give you guys a taste, the level 1 video is going to be available here on YouTube for free, and there's also plenty of free resources on this channel, but past that, if you want the most complete, most up-to-date, easiest to follow roadmap, please go check out the Patreon. With that, let's get into level 3. You need to understand, first of all, what a scale is. And then once you understand what that is, you can combine it with chords that we learned in the previous level for your next concept, which is understanding what a key is. You also need to learn the first position minor pentatonic scale. This is the most important scale in all of guitar. You should learn alternate picking, and you also need to know all the notes on the low E string. Some recommended songs for this level are Sweet Home Alabama by Leonard Skinner, Running Down a Dream by Tom Petty, House of the Rising Sun by The Animals, Highway to Hell by AC/DC, and Hurt, the Johnny Cash version. Level 4, this is the level of unbearable despair, because this is about when guitar players realize just how much they don't know. In this level, you should learn the second position major pentatonic scale. This builds on the first position minor pentatonic scale that you learned before. You should also learn bar chords in this level. Start with F major and B minor, but eventually you're going to want to learn how to play major and minor bar chords with both a 5th and 6th string root. Next, you should learn all the notes on the A string. Next, we're going to get into the world of ear training, and as your first concept for ear training on this roadmap, you should learn to be able to identify the key of a song by ear. Finally, you should start trying to improvise solos over backing tracks. This will be a lot easier now that you have 2 pentatonic scales you can work with. As far as where to find backing tracks, I'll tell you guys that Elevated Jam Tracks on YouTube is my favorite provider of backing tracks. I don't know the guy at all. I have no relationship. I just think his channel is awesome. A couple of good examples of songs that you should try to solo over, or that at least are good to try to solo over, I think, due to their straightforward and recognizable melodies and chord progressions, are Layla by Eric Clapton, Sultans of Swing by Dire Straits, Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd, and Whole Lotta Love by Led Zeppelin. All right, level 5. Since we just finished level 4, this is a serious point. You're actually good enough to jam now, so you should start to jam with people as much as you can. It's a good way to meet friends and maybe band members, hang out with people. It's a really unique way to hang out with people. There is one downside. Sometimes when people ask you to jam, it'll be your weird coworker, Craig. and your only real option is to fake your death. I've been on the run for years, and thankfully Craig hasn't found me yet, but I live in fear every day. Anyway, in level 5, the first thing we got to talk about are the 5 positions of the pentatonic scale. You already know 2 of these positions, so you're really just adding the final 3. You need to learn the regular major and minor scales. We call these diatonic scales, and really we don't call them anything at all. We just call them the major and minor scales. They are different from the major and minor pentatonic scales that you learned before. You need to understand the differences between relative and parallel major and minor keys and chords. You should shore up your stylistic techniques at this point. This is going to include bends, vibrato, hammer-ons and pull-offs, natural harmonics, and pinch harmonics. A couple of music theory topics. Number 1, you got to understand how to build the major scale in terms of half steps and whole steps. You also need to understand how the major pentatonic scale is created from and sort of is derived from the major diatonic scale. Hey you guys, Editing Kevin from the future here. I forgot one of the points when I was originally shooting. That is, at this point you should learn all the notes on the fretboard. I also want to clarify that there's not going to be any further song recommendations at this point because I don't think that you should be intentionally chasing songs at your skill level anymore. What I mean by that is that if you want to learn a difficult song at this point, even if it's a really advanced song, just go for it. If increasing your skill level is a part of learning the song, then at this point, so be it. Moving on to level 6. All right, level 6. At this level, you're really starting to be a very decent musician, and as such, your collection of gear is growing. One of the weird quirks that goes along with this is you start describing guitar tone with words that don't describe sounds at all. All of a sudden, you're talking about tones that are crunchy, or wet, or fat, or some other combination of nonsense that pisses off everybody who just wants to know what the guitar sounds like. Anyway, in level 6, we had to learn to harmonize the major scale. This is a huge point on the roadmap. To go along with that, you should learn the Nashville number system. Next, you should learn the functions of different chords and the basics of functional harmony. Tying into that, but from an ear training perspective, you should be able to use functional harmony to identify different chords and chord changes. You should familiarize yourself with really common chord progressions. You should learn about compound time signatures. And finally, you should learn what is a polyrhythm. All right, level 7. I do not have a joke for this level. To give you guys a little fast forward here, we're going to be talking about 7th chords. I've always thought that's kind of clever, so I've never written a joke for level 7, and I'm not starting now. The first thing you should do in level 7 is recap triad construction and add the 7th note to your triads. Next, you got to learn how to play some 7th chords, okay? These are going to be derived from bar chords, and you need a couple of shapes. You need to learn how to play a major 7th chord, minor 7th chord, dominant 7th chord, and a half diminished chord. And you got to be able to play these 4 versions of a 7th chord, each with a 5th string root and a 6th string root variant. I'll go ahead and make this its own point on the roadmap. That dominant 7th chord is going to be very important. Level 8, it's time to make an obscure, hyper-specific style of distortion pedal an essential part of your personality. Level 8 is not very long, but this stuff is very important. You need to learn the 7 diatonic modes and the theory behind them. Now that you understand modes, you should kind of relearn the pentatonic scales and understand that the 5 different positions of the pentatonic scale are really just modes of the major pentatonic scale. Next, you should learn all the scale intervals. You should also learn how to identify those scale intervals by ear. That's going to help with hearing melodies and solos and then being able to play them by ear. All right, level 9. This is about the level where you start thinking of yourself as so brilliant that the whole world needs to hear your thoughts on guitar. So like any well-adjusted, mentally healthy adult, you start talking into a glass cylinder late at night in a quiet room where there's no one to react to your jokes. They'll love that one. It's so clever. All right, besides becoming a YouTuber, there's some important things we got to talk about in level 9, and they all kind of circle around this idea of arpeggios. First thing you got to do is learn the cage system. There's 2 things that the cage system allows you to do that I really want to point out and make points on the roadmap here. Number 1, you should be able to apply cage shapes to rhythm guitar, and number 2, you should learn how chord tones can be targeted within solos to accentuate chords that are already happening in the song. Next, you should learn what an arpeggio is. Then learn the arpeggios within the 5 caged shapes. Next, learn the 5 minor caged arpeggios, and also learn why we don't really use the minor caged system. Next, add the 7th to your major caged arpeggios, then add the 7th to your minor caged arpeggios. Then learn dominant 7th arpeggios. The next point on the roadmap is that you should just understand the principles that build arpeggios, and you should be able to construct an arpeggio from any kind of a chord that you might encounter. That way you're not 100% reliant on a teacher like me to give you a library of arpeggios like I just did. You can make your own arpeggios and really tailor your practice to a specific song that you're working on. And just to add a little ear training point to the end of level 9, you should understand and be able to hear different harmonic parts. What I mean by that is that at this point you need to start training your ear so that you can hear maybe what a guitar is doing versus a piano. Maybe they're playing slightly different voicings of chords. You need to be able to start differentiating that rather than just hearing sort of one broad chord. Level 10. At this level, you're a guitar god. You can hear colors, you can smell chord changes, you can taste concepts, and I'm pretty sure you can move small objects with your mind. You're debatably human, and I'm in awe. The first thing you gotta learn in level 10 are chord extensions beyond the 7th, specifically 9th, 11th, and 13th chords. More broadly, you should be able to understand all chord extensions. Basically, I want you to be able to decode any chord symbol that gets put in front of you. You should learn the harmonic minor scale and the theory behind how it's constructed. Next, you should learn the melodic scale and the theory behind how it's constructed. As far as the ear training advice in this level, all I can say at this point is that for things we covered here and things that you might encounter in the future, learn how to identify those things by ear. So, for example, we talked about the harmonic minor scale. Learn those scale intervals and be able to identify that if you hear it out in the wild. Other than that, at this point, I can't recommend any more complex chords that aren't super genre specific. I can't recommend any more complex scales, again, that aren't super genre specific. I think at this point we've covered all the fundamentals that every guitar player should aspire to learn. We can't advance without getting genre specific anymore, so let's call this the end of the roadmap. So for those of you who watch the channel regularly, this has been Roadmap 3.0. I made the first roadmap a couple of years ago, second roadmap about a year and a half ago, and finally, after actually having made all those levels on Patreon, actually going through and teaching even the small concepts that are very deep, late in the roadmap, that showed me that I had some things out of order, that I needed to add some things and take some things away. That's why, specifically level 9 has been completely overhauled, and there's minor tweaks throughout the entire roadmap. If you're new here and this is your first roadmap video, first of all, thank you for being here. And now I guess you know that this roadmap has been refined over several generations at this point, and I think that it is the most complete, best blueprint for learning guitar that I could possibly come up with. If it becomes clear to me that the roadmap needs further amendments, I'll make those changes in the future and I'll update you guys. But for now, this is how you should learn guitar. Like I said before, you guys, please go check out the Patreon. I'm really proud of the stuff we have over there. Getting the roadmap completed was a huge accomplishment, and I think you guys will love it. That's all I got for now, so as always, thank you for watching.